everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
All right, Melissa. So given my hobbies...
Which ones?
Climbing and flying.
Yeah.
Which are, by some accounts, like risky activities, right? We've kind of talked about about like the risk of those. And I often talk about like separating risk into two categories, right? Which is likelihood that something's going to happen and the consequence of that thing.
Right.
And so I tend to engage in these activities that are low likelihood that something bad is going to happen, but high consequence, right?
Yep.
One of the things that, I don't know, I do to like understand that better is read accident reports. Well,
I think before you do that, you should explain what you mean again, because that's such a good juxtaposed position.
What I mean by risk?
Yeah, like when you say you categorize it into two categories, I think you should just quickly reframe that, because it's been quite a while since we've talked about that.
So this idea that when someone talks about risk, I believe they're talking about two separate things. They're talking about the likelihood that something is going to happen and then the consequence of that thing. So an example would be like, imagine you're walking on the curb on the side of the road. You're kind of like balancing on the curb.
Yep.
And walking like one foot in front of the other. The likelihood that you're going to fall off the curb, pretty high, right?
Pretty high.
It's hard to balance on a curb, right?
Especially if you've had a margarita.
Right? And you fall off the curb. Well, the consequence of falling off the curb isn't bad. Right? Like, oops, exactly. I kind of stumbled a little bit.
Yeah.
Worst case, maybe you sprain your ankle, but that's probably unlikely. So the consequence is not real high.
Right.
However, in something like aviation, like the likelihood that an accident happens while flying is very low. Statistically, very, very low. It's a very rare occurrence. However, the consequence of that thing happening, very high, often death.
Yes.
Right? Same with rock climbing. Occurrence of an incident, very, very low. The consequence of that is usually fatal.
Yeah.
So,
jeez. I feel nervous now. Just even having this conversation, I feel my anxiety just ticked up a little bit. Yeah.
So, there's the American Alpine Association every year publishes a report of all the climbing accidents. And then you go read through all the climbing accidents. Like, how did these climbing accidents happen? Right? So you can actually learn from the negative, right? Which I think is a really important thing. Yeah, just in general, even in life. Like, learn from failures, learn from other people's failures.
I agree. It's really the only true way that I think deep learning happens quickly, succinctly, and long term.
Yeah. So, same with aviation accidents. The NTSB and the FAA publish reports on every aviation accident that's ever happened.
I know what the FAA is. What is the NT? What did you say it was?
It's the National NTSB, National Transportation...
Security Bureau or something.
Something like that.
Okay. I was just curious.
Well, okay, so there was an aviation accident. So it's summer. Lots of people are flying, and there's aviation accidents happening, right? So as a pilot, like, I'm sort of very in tune with watching those, right? Yeah. And especially like people with friends and family who know I fly, every time there's an accident, they're like, "Hey, JJ, did you hear about this accident?" Yeah. Especially the ones that are close to home. Yeah. There was a recent aviation accident that was very close to home that like really kind of affected me because the pilot was my age, had 3 kids just like I do, and flew out of the same airport, right? So very, very close. And
and you knew him.
I kind of knew him. It was kind of like in my circle.
Yeah, through process of association.
Yeah. Like a degree removed, but certainly like pretty close. So so really the question with some of these aviation accidents, right, is what happened. Now, a minority, very few aviation accidents happen because of a failure of the airplane.
Yeah, so, I didn't know that.
Right, structural failure, engine failure, none of those things, like those are very, very rare, very rare. The idea that like the plane would structurally break in some way almost never happens. Almost all of the aviation accidents are pilot error, are human error, right? And they're a result of usually like a series of bad decisions.
Okay.
They call it like compounding decision making, which is like, hey, I decided to do one thing, and then something kind of didn't quite. It wasn't catastrophic, but something kind of didn't work out quite right, and then another kind of bad thing happened, and then just like a few things in a row, a few bad decisions in a row.
Yep.
And boom, there's the accident, right?
Yep.
So recently, there was an accident that, like indications would show that it was pilot error because there's a pilot in an aircraft, in actually a seaplane, that ended up hitting the water. The wing hit the water, the plane flipped around, and it was like a fatal accident. Very tragic. Very, very tragic.
Very tragic. I'm sorry. This is such a hard conversation, and I appreciate how you are being very objective in the storytelling because I know this has got a lot of emotion behind it. So,
yeah, and frankly, the pilot that died was my buddy's friend, right?
Yeah.
So, when I talked to him about this accident, he's a very stoic guy, and he was pretty emotional about it, which was really caught me caught me off guard. Which made it really much more I think more important to really kind of understand or learn from it. So the pilot was flying the airplane. It's a seaplane flying low over the lake, right? The plane was not in a landing configuration, so it was not intended to land. They banked, caught the wing, and the whole airplane toppled.
Wow. Awful.
Very bad.
Absolutely awful.
Awful. So, obviously, we don't want to, talk bad about someone who passed away because this is tragic for the family and everything. But what it really started getting me thinking about was the idea of like confidence, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where confidence is a really great virtue, right?
Yes.
Right? It's or the lack of confidence actually holds you back. You see a lot of times where people clearly don't kind of get to their full potential.
Yes.
Because of lack of confidence. You're like, hey, you have the ability, you're competent, like everything. You just don't have enough confidence. You see it all the time. Right? You see that all the time. But there's a line where confidence becomes overconfidence.
Yep.
And you move into an area where maybe you're
danger zone.
Yeah, you're doing things that are maybe outside your ability because you have too much confidence.
Yeah.
And there's a very sharp edge right there.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I agree. And, it's funny. because I think that little line that you're talking about, or that sharp edge, as you call it, holds so many consequences. You know, emotional, mental, physical. There's so many consequences to being overly confident about something.
Yeah, and to me, it's hard to find. Like the problem with the confidence edge is how do you find it?
Yeah.
Right? You can test. I mean, clearly, you can test it. And there's other things like in our culture that I think are interesting. Like, have you ever heard the phrase "fortune favors the bold"?
Yes.
It's a very common sort of business entrepreneur thing, you know. And the idea is, it's like, hey, actually,
put your feelings away, just go.
Well, yeah, right. Like, again, that lack of confidence, isn't the thing that will get you to your potential. So if you kind of overcompensate, fake it till you make it is also another kind of phrase that's a little bit, but you hate that phrase.
I hate that phrase. Have I mentioned that in the past?
So this idea that we kind of like, in some ways, like celebrate people who are very confident, very bold. Confidence is a very like attractive quality.
I know it is.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very attractive for people. Yeah, it is very, you know, I hadn't considered it on this. It's almost like a continuum. You know, it's like it's like I always say that every topic is two topics. It's the absence of it and it's the abundance of it, and they're each on the same stick, just on completely opposite ends.
Yeah, right.
You know, and that's what we're talking about right here.
Yep. The other thing is where does that come from? That old, like, you flew too close to the sun. What is Icarus?
Yeah.
Is that Icarus? What old fable is that?
I don't know, but you're right. I'm a future thinking person, JJ. I can't pull these quotes out.
But that idea, like, again, you know, fortune favors the bold, flying, you know, or you flew too close to the sun and you got burned, right? That would be like an example of like, hey, you're kind of overconfident, or you're kind of, you know, you're shooting for too much and you failed, right? So don't fly so close to the sun. Well, it's hard to judge where the sun is, where the limit is. Yeah. And sometimes finding out where that limit is has pretty negative effects.
You know what I was just thinking about, like, as we're just kind of playing with this edge, playing with this sort of stick, finding the balance in that, between the, on one end being completely lacking confidence, on the other having an abundance, too much of an abundance of it. You know, how do you personally gauge? How do you personally gauge when you're in your sweet spot of working to master something? Because there's things that are involved, things that have to happen in order for you to gain mastery of something. You know, gain some confidence. There has to be some level of investment and practice. And then at what point do you have mastery? How do you know you have mastery? And then when does it, and is it have nothing to do with your skill set and have everything to do with abundant supply of ego? Like, right?
Oh yeah, ego's all wrapped in there, right? Because like your ego wants to be the best, right? It feels great to be the best at something, or like know that you're the master of something, right? That feels great.
Yeah. I just find this sort of a fascinating topic to be thinking about, and I very gingerly want to be in this conversation just based on this story that you're talking about, because it does place us really squarely in the conversation, and I want to make sure that we are sounding like we're really truly having this conversation and we're not judging.
Oh yeah, no, certainly, like, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we don't. No one's going to know what happened inside that cockpit, right?
Right.
So it's not really about that particular incident. I think it's just the idea that incident really got me thinking about like, could that accident have come from overconfidence?
Right.
It certainly could have. Now, it could have been a medical issue. No one's ever going to know that.
Right.
But as a pilot, I think, okay, I got to make sure I'm leaving my ego like outside the cockpit. That I have that anything that I think is like cool or fun or exciting or like showy or any sort of activity that would feed into my ego is left outside that cockpit, because there's no room in the cockpit for that kind of that kind of mentality, that kind of thinking, because it leads to things like accidents, and there's plenty of other aviation accidents that are a result of, hey, I thought I was confident, I thought I could go into the situation. Turns out you can't. Turns out you outstripped your competency, or you literally went into a straight up dangerous, weather condition or some other whatever. And I think but what's really interesting to me is, can we think about times in our lives where we were overconfident and it bit us, or
for sure,
we were severely underconfident and it bit us? Because frankly, a lack of confidence can also hurt you.
Yes, and also be dangerous.
Absolutely. In both my activities, flying and climbing, lack of confidence is almost just as dangerous as overconfidence, because like if you're climbing something and you get to a hard spot and you don't have the confidence to navigate through it, well, in many cases you can't get yourself out of that spot without a very dangerous fall. So getting yourself into this mindset of like, hey, I can do it, I'm moving through this section, I'm capable, and kind of psyching yourself up in confidence to move through a dangerous section is more safe.
How many Hollywood movies get your adrenaline going with exactly this moment of someone reaching a point of physical whatever, and then stopping and feeling complete fear and shutting down, and it just causes adrenaline in the theater to go through the roof when you see somebody at peril because they have suddenly lost their confidence or they are in a can't turn back situation.
Right. Yeah, that's like a favorite human condition, right?
I hate that feeling, to be honest. But it is.
Oh man. You know what you're making me realize is I think I personally really like that
adrenaline
I like
junkie.
Feeling that scenario. Is that what an adrenaline junkie is? No, maybe. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe a little. Well, what's funny is that I was reflecting as you were talking about the scenario, and you were saying how, you have to leave your ego out. What you said was so interesting. You said, I have to leave my ego out of the cockpit. Okay. What a great phrase for life.
Yeah.
Because like I was just thinking about, there have been times and situations where in my professional career, I'm asked to be someone that can be counted on for an opinion, and it could be something I've been asked the same question for 20 years. And it would be easy to just bundle my ego with me in my cockpit and go on autopilot and let ego sort of sprint ahead of the case and like sound like,
I know exactly what to do here. I've had this happen 100 times, and here we go.
I don't even have to think about it. But even in the experience, even in that connection experience with people, if I leave my ego out of the cockpit, it's just so much richer of an experience. It allows so much deeper and real transformation to occur. Yeah. And I just think like that's sort of the key we're talking about. It's like, how do you create in yourself transformational mastery without toppling down the stairs of overconfidence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, to me, that's what we're playing with. We're playing with transformational mastery.
Yeah. Yeah. The other transition you're talking about that is coming up is this idea that once you maybe do master a subject, or you're top of your game on something.
Yeah.
That
exactly.
that really feeds into your ego. That's
I think you're right.
That's like ego food, right? Like
it's like a goldfish food.
But once you get there, you can very easily be like, "Yep, I'm number one. I'm the rock star." And that is that's another kind of dangerous cycle or place to be.
Yeah. Or even worse, do you take that feeling and then you get bored? And then your guard goes down, and you're no longer focusing on the little things that keep you at the top of your game.
Well,
because your ego says you don't need to.
Yeah, not only that happens individually, but we see that happen with companies, right? Market leading companies get crushed all the time because they get too complacent, right? Yep. They let their guard down. They think, "Oh, no one can touch us." And boom, the little upstart comes and eats their lunch.
Kind of like the current Twitter versus Threads conversation happening now, right?
We'll see how that plays out.
It's like the ego of no one could ever replace me. Watch this. 100,000 signups the first day in the competition.
Let's not have a pod about Elon Musk's ego.
Okay, but
take up the whole time.
It's too big.
Yeah,
we need too many.
It won't fit in our podcast.
But hang on a second, like that is such a good example of overconfidence.
Yeah. Okay. So, just a sidebar on Elon Musk. There is a guy who is like the richest man on the planet because he is so confident in what he says all the time.
I know.
That, look what it turned into. I mean, it turns into an electric car company and a space company and, whatever, buying Twitter and all the other weird things he's into. But that would be an example of, like, can you actually use confidence as, like, to your advantage? I think the answer is yes. Now, he might have got a little overconfident in his $40 billion acquisition of Twitter. And that's, likely not going to work out for him. But
right.
There's an interesting case study in a very high profile character that uses confidence in
as a tool.
Yep.
Or a weapon. See, again, there's that
true.
line. Right?
Yep.
There's the line again. It's just so interesting. And you start thinking about just everyday scenarios about being confident.
Yep.
And we always are talking about how to boost confidence. We spend a lot of time on the lacking end of that stick, trying to bring everybody up to this level of, feel good, try it, go for it, you can do it. Like, how many gazillion memes are out there on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram constantly trying to bolster people's confidence?
I wonder if there's like a statistic around, like, because what's your hunt? What's your gut? Do you think more people are underconfident or overconfident?
100% under.
Under.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like human nature to be underconfident or less confident.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I wonder why that is.
Well, I think it goes all the way back to what you always talk about as the cavemen. It's like we're human beings are tribal beings.
Yeah.
And if you have overconfidence, too much overconfidence, and everybody did, there would be no tribe.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like the alpha alpha male sort of thing, right?
Yeah, it's the eagle.
What we do like, though, what we do like as a tribe is we do like pushing people up on that pedestal. I mean, look at all of the famous actors, sports stars, big personalities. We like pushing those people up on the pedestal, and we like stoking up their ego and the confidence to almost watch like as entertainment,
like a voyeur.
How close to the sun can they get without getting burned, right?
Yes.
That's kind of interesting behavior.
Yeah, because we do kind of laud it until it goes overboard, right? And there's that edge again.
Oh, it's and we love watching it go overboard too.
We love it. Yeah. Hello. Why do we even have
how many
the cancel culture's real?
Right? How many Hollywood stars like we push up and put on a pedestal and then we watch their like life topple over in some dramatic way, and everyone's like super fascinated.
I knew it. Yeah. See, look at that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's very interesting to think about this little line between, because I think, you know what, as we're building confidence, I think you're right. We love the feeling of confidence. We love watching other people in the feeling of confidence. We love that. But then if ego takes over and pushes that overconfidence just one little bit too far,
yep.
We hate it. I mean, it's not even like just a little discredit. It is like straight up flip a switch and you hate it.
Yeah. Other people hate it. Yep.
Yeah.
It feels good to the person though. Like,
yeah.
Right?
Unless they're just not aware. Like, well, no, I think some of them are very aware. Yeah. It's just interesting to think about. We just don't think about overconfidence very much. We spend all of our topics around confidence. It feels like the majority of them anyway, talking about how to become more.
Yeah.
How to become more confident.
Yep.
It's okay. You already know this. Like convincing people that they should feel more confident based on who they are or what their skills are or whatever.
So really, it really comes back to me, the question of how do you actually test your limits? Now, I'm not saying in this sort of extreme sport way. Like, I'm not advocating, hey, someone should test the limit until they, have a fatal accident, right? But really, like, you don't, so many people don't know what their potential is.
Yes.
And
agreed.
I think it's way, way, way higher than the average person thinks.
I agree.
I think
I agree
each
with that,
individual, 100%. Each one of us has so much more potential in us, but it's hard to explore or push towards the upper boundary of that because it's scary. Like sometimes it gets real scary as you start getting into where your upper limit of whatever you're working on is.
Yeah.
Because like, again, the risk feels like it goes higher, like the consequence feels higher, right?
Yeah.
The bigger clients I'm working on, the more the bigger contracts, right? All of this, you're starting to push your upper limit of maybe something in your career. Feels scary because if one of those fails, it's a big hit to your ego. Might be a
it's
big
gonna
hit,
look bad.
And might be a big hit to your pocketbook.
There's a failure,
right? Doesn't look good for your career.
Yeah.
So we stay more conservative than our potential.
Yeah. I feel like and this is what comes up for me when you ask that question. What I feel like the answer is just trying something to increase your mastery with curiosity, not with high judgment. I mean, there can even be expectation and curiosity. I think that's really healthy. Like, I don't know if I can, but I'll be open to the experience. Like, wouldn't that be cool if, like that I think is a really good feeling behind trying to increase your mastery on anything.
Yep.
I think when you get into a little bit of trouble, it's when you start to judge yourself and compete in a way that's a pass or fail to increase your margin.
Yep.
When you go into that strong self-judgment trying to get better, you're going to take risks that are not appropriate. You're going to take risks that are at bare minimum will cause you to fall less than what you started with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe through your own emotion or your sense of loss or fear or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So another great way to start testing your limit on different activities, whatever it might be, is find someone who is more experienced than you.
That's really good.
Right. So
a mentor
in aviation
or a buddy
and climbing, I do this all the time. go climb with someone who's way better than me. And so that means we can go climb at a high level because we're confident that it's safe, but it's pushing my limit, not their limit. Same with flying.
You've always done that with tennis. You've done that with tennis too.
I always try to play. My tennis rule is be the worst person on the court.
Yep, exactly.
So that means I can always test my limit. And I'm not, so for me, that's fun. Same with aviation. It's always like, hey, if you're not feeling confident in an area or you want to go try something new, go with an instructor. Because they're comfortable in that situation. You're not. It starts testing your limit.
Yeah, under the mastery of someone else.
And I think we can do that at work. I think we can do that in our personal life really too. I think we can come alongside people who maybe are at a different point on their, self-awareness journey, right?
Right.
Come alongside them, and then we can start testing.
www.selfawarenessjourney.com.
Testing, like, hey, can we also be in that same like emotional or spiritual space as this person? Oh, I can be, and and maybe you can work
what a surprise.
Through that, with them.
Yeah. Yep.
So, all right.
Well, I'm very, very sorry I'm very sorry to hear that story. But I think that this has been a really interesting conversation.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.